In every empire, there are whispers. Asterisk, but in this one, the loudest whispers came not from the throne room, but from the queen's bedchamber. She was not born to be queen. She was born in a mountain village, where wind howled through the cracks, in wooden walls, and girls were taught to lower their gaze. Asterisk, but she had eyes that refused to bend. And when the king visited the outer provinces in search of a wife to bind the people, she was chosen, not because she was noble, not because she was docile, asterisk, but because she was beautiful, unbroken, and unrelated to the politics of court. Asterisk, a blank slate. They thought her silence was obedience, but it was observation. The first night, asterisk, her wedding was grand, performed in front of generals, priests, and ambassadors. But the first night was not filled with passion. The king didn't even touch her. Asterisk, he simply stood at the edge of the bed, stared, and said, asterisk, your body is no longer yours, it is mine. And the crowns. She said nothing, because she understood instantly. She wasn't a wife. She was a symbol, a weapon, a stage. The king's strategy. The king was not mad. He was clever. Too clever, and cruelty was his sharpest blade. He believed true humiliation was better than blood. Asterisks, he believed you didn't defeat enemies by killing them, you defeated them by breaking their pride. And so, when foreign rulers came to negotiate, asterisk, or rebel leaders surrendered on their knees, asterisk, or old rivals offered peace. He didn't offer gold, he didn't offer land. Asterisk, he offered something darker. Asterisk, you may spend the night with my queen. Asterisk, at first, they thought it was a joke, a test, a trap, but it wasn't. The guards would escort them, the queen would be waiting, and in the morning, they would leave, silent, shaken, ashamed. Her role, she never screamed, never cried, asterisk, never spoke of it. She learned to become stone, to lay there as a living monument to her husband's dominance. Asterisk, some came in anger, some in pity, some in curiosity, but all of them left feeling smaller, because they knew they had touched the queen, but they were still beneath the king. The silent language of the palace. Everyone knew. Servants whispered in corners. Wives of ministers looked at her with pity or disgust. Even the guards looked away when she passed, but no one ever said a word. Asterisk, because she wore the crown, because she hosted feasts, because she smiled flawlessly in public. Asterisk, but in her eyes, a war burned. The night of the northern general. One night, after defeating the rebellious north, the king summoned the captured general to the palace. Asterisk, he fed him, praised his tactics, offered him forgiveness. Asterisk, then said, as if offering a glass of wine, asterisk, you may share a bed with the queen tonight. As a guest, as a reminder. Asterisk, the general was tall, brutal, known for burning villages. He stared at the king in disbelief, but the queen was already waiting in her chamber. Asterisk, the general entered hesitant at first, then cruel. Asterisk, he whispered, does he watch? She said nothing. He asked, do you enjoy it? Still silence. He leaned closer. Asterisk, you are his punishment to others. But what is his punishment to you? Her eyes flickered, and for the first time, she spoke. Asterisk, that I survive. Her secret. Asterisk, what? No one knew was this. Each time a man entered her chamber, she remembered everything, their names, their weaknesses, their fears. Asterisk, and she recorded them in code, hidden beneath the lining of her bed, written in a dead language she had learned from an old tutor. Asterisk, she wasn't just surviving, she was documenting, planning, waiting. Because, no matter how many men touched her, asterisk, no matter how many saw her as the king's possession, she knew one thing, the body may bend. Asterisk, but the mind is a throne they could never sit on. The morning after at every dawn, she rose, she dressed in white, she braided her hair. Asterisk, she placed the crown on her head, not because it gave her power. Asterisk, but because it reminded her who truly had none. The king watched her every morning, sipping his wine. He thought she was defeated. Asterisk, but she was evolving. They thought she would break, but queens don't break, they wait. Asterisk, and when the king turned her body into a battlefield, she did not weep. She studied. Asterisk, every man who came into her chamber walked in with pride, and walked out with shame. Thought they were conquering her, asterisk, but she was writing their deaths into memory. A crown of ashes. The palace changed over time. The king grew older, fatter, more paranoid. Asterisk, he trusted no one, not his guards, not his ministers. Only his ritual gave him peace. The humiliating parade of men through his queen's bedchamber. Asterisk, but something shifted. The queen had stopped reacting. Her silence was no longer submission. It was strategy. She began choosing what scent to wear, what colors to dress in, what phrases to repeat. Asterisk. Every encounter became a message. Asterisk, not for the men, but for the king. I am not yours. Asterisk, I am what you fear. A memory you cannot erase. A poison named power. Asterisk, one night, the king's greatest rival, a cunning diplomat from a neighboring empire, was invited to the palace. Asterisk, instead of chains, he was welcomed with wine. Asterisk, instead of insults, he was offered the queen. He smirked and accepted, but when he entered her chamber, she did something unexpected. She stood. She looked him in the eye, and she spoke. If I lay with you, it is not his victory. Asterisk, it is your defeat. The diplomat didn't understand. Not then. Asterisk, but days later, his wife found strange marks on his neck, marks shaped like letters from a forgotten tongue, messages written with teeth and ink, burned into flesh. Asterisk, within weeks, he was overthrown. Asterisk, the queen had turned seduction into sabotage. A whisper war. Asterisk. Word spread quietly through the empire. Asterisk, she doesn't scream. Asterisk, she remembers everything. Asterisk, she whispers secrets in the dark, and they come true. The men sent to her bed began to fear her. Some refused. Some begged for mercy. One disappeared entirely. The king was furious, but also afraid, because every night she still welcomed whoever was sent, but she smiled now. Asterisk, in her smile was not submission, it was a storm gathering behind silk. The queen's book of names beneath her bed. Behind a panel only she could open, lay a black book. Inside, names, details, patterns, memories. One man's left hand trembled after every lie. Another whispered his dead sister's name before climax. Asterisk, one had a birthmark on his shoulder shaped like the king's crest. She wrote them all, not because she needed revenge on the men. Asterisk, they were tools. She wanted revenge on the one who made her a tool. A palace turned theater soon. She began performing in public. Not plays, not dances. Asterisk, but presents. Asterisk, she wore the same perfume every day, except the day after the king insulted her. Then she wore none. Asterisk, she dressed in mourning black. Though no one had died, she laughed at jokes no one made. She walked into council chambers, said nothing, and left. And still, laws changed the next day. The palace was hers, and they all knew it, even the king. The final guest. One winter night, the king invited a young prince from a rising southern tribe. Asterisk, handsome, arrogant, dangerous. Asterisk, he told him, spend the night with her. Tell your people, I own everything. Asterisk, even this. But the prince never emerged from her chamber. He died in the night. Asterisk, the cause, unknown. Asterisk, the body, untouched. Asterisk, the queen, smiling at breakfast. When the king asked her what happened, she said only, he came to conquer, he left. Conquered. The reign beneath the crown. Asterisk, after that, no man entered her chamber again, not because she refused, but because they feared her more than they feared the king. The ritual had ended. The humiliation reversed. Asterisk, she had turned the most sacred space of shame into a throne room no one dared walk into. The king's collapse. Asterisk. He aged rapidly, became erratic. He heard her name in the rustling of curtains. Asterisk. He flinched at the scent of her perfume. Asterisk, he began ordering guards to watch her shadow. He banned mirrors. He spoke to her less and less. And yet, she was in every decision. Because every move he made now was in reaction to her true victory. One morning, the king was found dead. No wounds, no poison, no struggle, just a blank stare on his face, and her crown placed beside his head, upside down. In her chamber, she dressed slowly. She walked to the throne room, sat on his throne, and said nothing, because there was no need. Asterisk, they all bowed. Not because